So we're going to go over the windows of the sky point. So the way I separated this, so that it's easy to recall, there's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 windows of the sky point. There's 5 at the SCM. There's 3 at the neck, and then there's 2 at the chest. Okay, so at least if you remember this, it may actually be helpful, so you'll recall what am I missing. So that's the reason why I did it that way. And we're gonna first go over the function. So it helps regulating ascending and descending of qi from the head. In other words, it moves yin to the upper body and yang to the lower body. So if you see the head, right, and this is the neck. We learned that atomically, the blood flow, the only way to go through it, it's through the back of the neck. Even atomically in Western medicine, that back of that, the spine that we have is where all the blood travels through up to our heads. So when we needle around the areas of the SCM, the neck, of course, and then the chest, which is very atomically close to the area, it would make sense that it regulates, ascends, and descends the qi, because we say qi needs to always be moving, right? Sometimes they help certain points, helps to have things circulate to get to, below or above. And so it helps to pretty much, also the balancing of yin and yang is also very important in TCM. So it helps to move the yin to the upper body. Yin is also submerged, it's always lower, right, as we have learned. Yang is in the upper part of the body, so it helps move the yang. In other words, it's helping to circulate things. You can think of it that way. That's what windows of the sky point actually does. It helps you to regulate, ascend, and descend the qi, right, from the head. And now the symptoms that you may want to use this for if patients have these symptoms. So if the patient have coughing and wheezing, headaches or dizziness, heat and redness or swelling of upper face, eyes, and goiter, scrofula, throat, sudden onset of disease, this is when you want to use windows of the sky point. You want to personalize it, of course, to a patient. So I made this little illustration right here. See, as you know, this is the SCM area right here. And we're going to, if you learned all the locations of the points that goes all to the SCM, you can pretty much make your bet that all of them are there. So I'm going to try to go in order. So LI18, at the long, large intestine, we learn LI18 is level with the tip of the Adam's apple. So we know the Adam's apple. It's leveled with it. And it's between the sternal head and the clavicular head of the SCM. So we know that this is why it's right here, because it's so the way you would find actually LI18, you would first find the Adam's apple, you level it, but you'll always keep in mind, I have to find the sternal head and the clavicular head. It's in between the midpoints of this, lateral to the Adam's apple. And that's how you would find LI18. As we go over this, you would start to slowly also learn the language. That may be important for exam as well. I'm going to actually highlight some of these. So you see between the sternal head, clavicular head of SCM. You can say clavicular head or the sternal head, but you get what I'm saying. It's level with the Adam's apple. So that's the first one, LI18. Let me not highlight that. And then after that, we have the stomach, because it's long, large intestine, and then we have the stomach. So the stomach 9, it's also level with the tip of the Adam's apple. So the same thing, you find the Adam's apple, but where is it? It's anterior to the border of SCM. So you know that the SCM border would be here, and then the Adam's apple, it's level with it. So you know that this is stomach 9. I'm going to highlight a few points here. So this is also the tip of the Adam's apple, stomach 9, and it's going to be anterior border of the SCM. So here it's between the sternal head and the clavicular head of SCM. Here is anterior, right? So when you look at it, stomach 9 is actually in front of LI18. So you'll know, okay, that's stomach 9 and that's, LI18. So they're all level together, okay? And then after that, we're going to go to, we have the, this was not supposed to be the stomach. This was supposed to be SI. So let me just change that. I don't think that was written properly. I don't know why that occurred. That's a mishap on me. So we have now 3 of the fire channels. You can also think of it as, the 3 fire channels. Fire channel is associated with everything going yang and, going up. So maybe that's why these are the points that are selected here. But honestly, I think atomically, the reason they're selected is because they are around the area, atomically, around the head. So you bring the chi up and down, and you help to regulate, and you balance the yin and yang. So if you see here, SI16 is posterior and inferior to the mastoid process posterior border of SCM. So we already know that this is the SCM, right? It's posterior and inferior to the mastoid process. And this is where it is. So we know the mastoid process is around here, right? And then what it says is posterior and inferior. But it is posterior to the border of the SCM. So that's how you know it's right there. I'm going to make some marks. So it's posterior and inferior to the mastoid process. So you find the mastoid process, and you know that it has to be posterior and inferior. So you go back, and you know it's somewhere inferior, but you'll know when to kind of align it with posterior border of the SCM. And that's how you find. Okay, my mistake. That's how you find Sanjiao 16. That was my mistake. So that's how you find Sanjiao 16. I meant to do SI 16 first, but you know what I mean. The reason I try to do SI 16 first was because I wanted you to know that stomach 9, LI 18, and SI 16, because we know that we learn the heart, and then we do SI, and then we do the water channels, and then it's after that we do PC and then Sanjia. I wanted to memorize them in the order that we learned them, the channels, so you kind of remember it in your head too, maybe. Oh, in the first 4 quadrants there were only just 2, and then the second quadrant there were just 2, last quadrant there was only 1, but there are 5 at the SCM for the windows of the sky point. I kind of wanted you to have that kind of repertory in your head, but I made a little mistake. So even with SI16, it's level with the Adam's apples. These are the 3. See? SI16, then we have LI18 and stomach 9. So you can remember it that way. Stomach 9 is in the front, in between the clavicular head and the sternal head. That's LI18. And then SI16 is going to be posterior, of course, of the SCM. So that's how they're all aligned. But you have to know all 3 of them happen to be, lateral or parallel with the Adam's apple. So that's how you'll find all of them, from the anterior line here, and then you go to the back here. So I'm going to actually draw a line that separates this. Let me do a highlighter. Let me do purple. Something a little bit lighter. Okay. think that'll be helpful. So there we have it. And then after the SI 16, we have SI 17. Now here, this one is posterior to the angle of the mandible. So we know where the mandible is. It's like right under the right underneath your ear, but it's that jawline pivot point, the angle. You can think of it as the angle, the jawline for a man. That angle of the mandible, but it's anterior border of SCM. So you understand that SI 17 and stomach 9, they're both anterior of the SCM. The only thing is stomach 9, LI 18, SI 16 are all three of them are level with the Adam's apple. But the first two that are anterior of the SCM is a stomach 9 and SI 17. The only thing is SI 17 is posterior to the angle of the mandible, but stomach 9 is going to be level the tip of the Adam's apple, and then it's going to both be anterior to the border of SCM. So here you want to find the mandible, the angle of the mandible, posterior. And then you want to make sure that you're anterior to the SCM, and that's how you find SI 17. Different from where SI 16 is posterior. So this is where it's posterior. So this is the center, LI 18, posterior. This is also posterior, and these two are also these two are anterior. So you can divide it in many different ways, but you have to remember it somehow. So I don't want to make this too messy, but I don't know, maybe you can do a little invisible line right there or something. Maybe like that. So you'll know that, oh, all of these three right here, the first three, you can think of it, they're all level with the Adam's apple, except that one is in the front, which is stomach 9. The one that's between the sternal and the clavicular head is going to be LI 18. And then we have SI 16, which is, level with the Adam's apple, but it's behind, posterior to the SCM. Then you have to recall, after that, then we have SI 17. We know that SI 17 and stomach 9 are both in the anterior part of the SCM. The only thing is that SI 17 is, the pinpoint is angle of the mandible. It's posterior to the angle of the mandible, but it's anterior to the border of SCM. Then we also recall, besides, SI 16, there's also Sanjiao 16. You can also, if you forget if it's 16 or 17, look, the two backs are 16. You can think of it that way. 16, Sanjiao 16 is going to be, you have to find the mastoid process. It's posterior and inferior to the mastoid process. And from there, we go where? Posterior to the SCM. So you have to kind of imagine and think of different ways to associate. These three are always level with the Adam's apple. These two are going to be in the front, stomach 9 and SI 17. The middle holder is LI 18. Then we have SI 16 and Sanjiao 16. Both 16s, they're going to be in the back, posterior of the SCM. The only thing you have to always recall for, LI 18 is in between the sternal head and clavicular head of SCM. Here, we know that it's level to the Adam's apple, but it's anterior to SCM. Here, we should know that it's posterior to the angle of the mandible, posterior inferior to the mastoid process for the Sanjiao 16. Both of these 16s are posterior to the border of SCM. So if you kind of recall it like this, I don't think you'll ever get confused, and there will be no time that you will actually forget. That's why I try to make them in order. So we know that, okay, there's the point that goes to the SCM, we know is like stomach 9. So that's first. Then we have LI 8, then we have LI 18. Then we have SI 16, and then we have SI 17 and Sanjiao 16. And then in your brain, you're thinking about it. Oh, the two 16s are in the back. The two front are going to be the stomach 9 and the SI17. The middle holder is LI18. And then you kind of recall in this way. You'll remember the locations. You'll never get confused where they may be sorted. Key point atomical location names. If you remember them, you may be able to even score points on the exam if you're able to remember. Like, one's for the mastoid process and the other one is for the posterior of the mandible. So things like that will make it very easy. Okay, so that's for the 5 at SCM. And then there's 3 at the neck. So we have UB10, which is right at the base of the skull. And then we have DO16 as well, which is, the midpoint, midline. And then we have REN22, which is also the midline, but it's the midline of the cervicular kind of area right here. This is the one that we needle down, right, and right down to the in between the suprasternal fossa. So we kind of we tuck it right underneath the sternum. So when you see the points here, they are necessarily at the neck, but it's at the front of the neck and also the back of the neck. So you can think of that there's 2 in the back of the neck, and then there's actually 1 in front of the neck. So if you see the base of the skull, that's where UB10 is. The location for this is 1.3 soon lateral to DO15, and the depression on the lateral aspects of the trapezius. So if you see right here, this is where UB10 is. But it's only about 1.3 soon lateral. So we know that all the UB points are usually 1.5 or 3 for the inner and outer shoes. There's one at the tail of the point, which is about 3.5 from the coccyx bone, but that's in the lower area. But this is the outlier. One of the outliers, another one up there. But it's 1.3 soon lateral to DO15. So DO15 is 1.3 soon this way or this way. So bilaterally, whichever way. But it's the depression on the lateral aspect of the trapezius. Okay, so I'm going to highlight this a little bit. So it's 1.3 soon, lateral to DO15. Those are the key. And then so DO16 is up. So you see 1 soon up from the midline of posterior headline. So we always use anterior headline as a mark point when we're doing points in the front of the head. But here it's going to be the posterior hairline. And it's in the external protuberance, depression between and the trapezius of both sides. You see? So these both, say trapezius, but DO16, if you see this, is 1 soon up from the midline of the posterior. So you see midline of posterior, it's 1 soon up. And it's at the external tuberance depression in between the trapezius of both sides. So that's how you know where DO16 is. So you should remember UB10 and a little bit above, almost like a triangle right here. And that's why it's DO16 and UB10. You can think of here as like an upside down triangle. So you can think of it as, in the back it's the, triangle. So there needs to be UB10 here and then DO16 here, because we know DO15 is here. And then you can think of it as, this upside down triangle for the front when there's only 1, and that would be REN22. It's in the center of the suprasternal fossa right here. So that's how you can think of it. There's 2 in the back, 1 in the front of the neck. The language on this are a little bit difficult, but if you remember that the external tuberance is like right here, and we know it's between the trapezius of both sides. We just know that UB10 is going to be 1.3 soon lateral to DO15 this way, and then DO16 is going to be one soon up from the posterior headline of the external tuberance. And of course, REN 22, let me also hide this. So it's going to be the center of the suprasternal fossa. Fossa meaning that there is a groove, is the word meaning. And sternal, right, is supra, means above. So you could think of it that way. And so you remember the anatomy. Sometimes people tend to forget the anatomy. I mean, I sometimes forget the language as well sometimes. So this will definitely help. And then we have 2 points in the chest. So there's PC1 and lung 3. This I didn't add. PC1, as we know, it pretty much starts around the chest area, but it's, under the, as we know, the location is usually one soon, kind of lateral to the nipple, right? It's in the fourth intercostal space area. It's kind of where REN 17 kind of is, but REN 17 is in the midline. But PC1 is around that area too, except it's one soon lateral to the nipple. So that's where PC1 is. This is the one in the chest. And of course, lung 3, we know, also goes to the lateral side as well of and then from there we know the deltoid, and so we go down 3 soon from the axillary fold. So they don't quite align parallel. PC1 could be a slightly higher than the lung 3, but you can think of it as it's somewhere in the front, around the chest area. These you'll just have to memorize, the PC1 and the lung 3. And you can think of it as, PC1, somewhere around a little above the, nipple, and then, lung 3, it's 3 soon down from the biceps area of the arm. Starting from the axillary fold, you go down. So you can think of it that way. It's in the, the lateral border of the biceps brachii muscle. So these 2 you're going to just have to memorize. These 5, I gave you some sense on how you can remember them because they're a bit difficult to remember. They can be confusing 16, 17. And the ones in the back of the head, you can kind of remember that there's 2 in the back, 1 in the front, and then the PC1 and lung 3, you can say, the 2 of them are going to be in front of the chest. If you recall, these, you shouldn't have a problem remembering the 10 windows of the sky point.